tips?
Nah.
Okay, we're just flying by the seat of our pants.
All right. Hi everyone, it's Heath here from Mother Health School. The amazing Willow Francis from Self-Kindness Project. CatherineandWillow.com is your main hub, isn't it?
Yep.
But we'll go through all this later. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm actually really good. Had a couple of days totally in the flow state.
Wow.
And there's that sweet spot where every call, everything just drops into place and you finish the day just thinking, wow, that's living when you're really in that flow. It's
Synchronicity
effortless.
is a beautiful thing.
It is. Gorgeous thing.
And surprisingly, it's a skill set to get there, isn't it? You'd think you'd just like the fool, you would fall into a flow state, but it's not that easy.
No, it's not. It's like a lot of things, it's easy. I mean, it's simple in one way, but it's not always easy because of our predilection towards distraction, our predilection towards all our other challenges. But with practice, it arrives, and it arrives more consistently. It doesn't have to be a random happening. That's what I like about it.
And isn't that a tenet of a conscious life? It's simple but not easy.
Absolutely.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
Simplicity, indicative of the truth, the core stuff, but very rarely not easy.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Hey, so for people that don't know you, man, you kicked off as a busking, basket weaving dude from Byron Bay to live in the wildlife.
One of my iterations, yeah.
Yeah. Trauma nurse. You've seen a lot of action at
Emergency
the front line,
nurse,
emergency, stuff like that. Then when I met you were the first person to bring ayahuasca over to the West. You brought Darpan over.
Yep.
And started that community, which was interesting. You started the raw superfoods, the cacao, probably the first raw cacao business in WA.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
And Elixir Craft and all the stuff
yeah.
that you're into as well.
Yeah.
So it was the early days. You know, David Wolfe was just on the scene. He was probably the go-to person globally who'd been doing the research into, plants for nutrition and the higher value plants, goji berries, cacao, all the good stuff. And then we got on board and we went to Hawaii and we hung out at his place as well. We were doing some other warrior training, and then we got onto an amazing range of, Ayurvedic herbs that we brought in as well. And then we just wanted to share, as we do, the knowledge and give people some power back around their food choices and diets, and making elixirs really enjoyable. So craft this amazing elixir filled with all the good stuff, but really, really tasty.
Yeah,
so you wanted to have it.
Which I can attest to fire. What was it, the Coco La Vida?
Coco Bebida por la Vida, the chocolate drink for life. You got it.
Yeah, you're killing it on that one. That was amazing. It is amazing. And then probably one of your latest iterations now is with mushrooms.
Yep.
A bit of a dibble-dabble around there. And you've always grown stuff, and you always get right into it. Unfortunately, the bee thing didn't work out too well for you.
Unfortunately
Turns out, anyway, different story. So, I mean, your background's always has been in expansion of consciousness. You really gravitate towards the ritualistic side of things, ceremonial side of things. But reason I've got you on here, talk about whatever we want, but I really want to talk because you're a Heartmath facilitator.
Yep.
And one of the senior people in that movement, which I think is the most interesting emotional health, mental health movement.
Yeah, well, emotional self-regulation, it really seems to be a linchpin to our growth in any area. You can be doing your yoga, you can be doing your meditation, doing all good things for yourself. But if you're not emotionally regulated, that's going to trip you up every day through your own self-talk, through the way you're responding to things in the world, the way you're reacting to things. And, so often we're doing really good stuff for ourselves, and we've got very high expectations of being these pure spiritual beings. We're doing our yoga, we're doing all the good stuff, but the thoughts are there, the judgment, the flipping out when someone cuts in front of you in the traffic.
And these things are very real because we concentrate, we've been indoctrinated and hypnotized that everything is chemistry. The paradigm we live in medicine is very much of it, it's just chemistry. And so therefore a lot of the psyche stuff, psychological stuff they think is whatever, but we know that it releases chemistry, different emotions release chemistry, and it's pretty massive.
Yeah, well, just as a brief take that a lot of people don't realise, this is where Heartmath, 40 years of research, 400 published journal articles, really looking at our anatomy and physiology in a new way. And the simple result is we found out that the heart actually runs the show a lot more than the head. They're sort of together now. That you can't really separate the head and the heart. And it's not the heart fluffy type heart, it's the heart that's at the centre of the autonomic nervous system, the two branches coming through the heart. And then the data that heart picks up, it sends it to the brain. And depending on how that data looks, the signals flowing up the vagus nerve to the brain. If they're smooth and coherent and coordinated, then the thalamus, that switchboard operator, says, safety, everything's okay. So we plug in the neocortex, that wonderful part that makes us human, the executive centre, thinking outside the box, thinking of the other people, that lovely human part of ourselves. But unfortunately, if that signal is incoherent or all jagged and not smooth flowing, the thalamus says, oh shit, danger, fight, flight, freeze. It's the oldest signal in the body. It's what's kept us alive. It's the ancient signal of the threat. And when that comes on board, it's faster than anything you can do. It just takes over. It shuts down all the brain, all that sort of bigger picture brain, and we fight, flight, or freeze. And so everything gets very narrow. It's very I-centric. You don't think about other people. You don't think about kindness and gratitude. Just get me out of here. I've got to do this. And you're short. Your language is hard to articulate.
Shut down your immune system. Shut down digestive system.
Everything. You don't need any of those things. We've got to survive. And then when we get out of that, then we can get back to that again. The challenge in the modern world is that fight, flight, freeze is on all the time. That's being triggered every time you're a bit pissed off. You go on Facebook. Someone hasn't done this. You read the news. Someone cuts you off in the traffic. You're not quite good enough in your yoga pose. All these little inputs to the body, the heart or the brain body interprets that as danger. So you go into fight, flight, freeze. More cortisol is released in the body. More cortisol, more inflammation. So we set up a very unhealthy or unsupportive internal environment. And
exhaustive, isn't it? Because that's what's happening nowadays. We're stuck in a chronic sympathetic state,
yep.
Which is like, if you got sympathetic is like the accelerator in the car, parasympathetic's like the brake. So nowadays people are like they got the accelerator pushed right down and they got the brake on at the same time, and this is the health problem.
It clearly shows the wear and tear on the body, and it's a great analogy. It's the car analogy: foot on the brake and the accelerator at the same time. Imagine all the wear on all the little rubbers and how much fuel's being burnt. And this is what people are finding, that they're so exhausted. And one of the leading bits of research that's come out of Heartmath is that our emotions, these ephemeral things that we thought were just coming and going like food in the fridge, they have a direct effect on our physiology. And the wear and tear comes from our negative emotions, irritation, frustration. All those sorts of emotions create a biological or biochemical change in the body that's all about wear and tear. It fires everything up. The heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, cortisol's released. Everything's in that charged sympathetic state, and that's exhausting. We're only meant to do that for short periods, and then we're meant to have that nice parasympathetic, the rest stage, the rest and release, the rest and digest stage. And interestingly, the other feelings, the other side, what we call renewing emotions, are the ones that we love the most. Kindness, compassion, gratitude, appreciation. These emotions actually change our physiology and then our neurology. A lot of people don't realise the way our perception of reality really changes, physically in the brain. Which parts of the brain are wiring and firing depends on which emotions we're feeling. They really are that clear cut.
And that's why the science now is, and that's what I love about Heartmath, that's why I was drawn to it, is it's completely science, heavy science-based. That's why it's called heart, the compassion, the love, the everything. And then the math is the science. Systematic, nuts and bolts, science-based. And it's the most science-based movement in this area, why I love it. But the science is now telling us very clearly that for a successful life, you need emotional health, not IQ.
That's right.
We focus on intelligence, but it's not. It's done. It's emotional health is the most important thing if you want a successful life.
Yeah. Well, if you think of us as binary creatures, we either feel safe or we don't. That's pretty well evolutionary what we're designed. If we're not feeling safe, all the amygdala fires off looking for pattern recognition, the fight, flight, freeze comes on board until we feel safe again. Once we feel safe, we can do anything. When I felt safe enough to jump off a cliff with a paraglider, I'd done the training, my coach was really good, I'd practice, and then it came to a point where I felt safe enough to take a big risk and fly. And then I flew, and that was a massive achievement.
And that's a flow state right there. I mean, the whole thing, and I, in my course, one of the chapters is flow state, because I think if you're about health, then the pinnacle of health is experiencing these flow states. It's the best you'll ever feel. But to get into a flow state, there needs to be a risk and a skill set that can get you feeling safe in the risk, and bang. So it's all pretty important stuff.
And it feels so good. That's the thing. When we're in the flow state, everyone will tell you, when you hit those days where, whether you're a sports person or whether you're just getting through a day and every call works and you pull into the car park. I just pulled in the car park here. I go to an undercover car park. It's 38 degrees out there. And on the way, I'd been thinking about a few empty bays in the car park. I pull in underneath 3 empty bays undercover.
There you go.
In the flow. Other days, you'd be out, you couldn't get in, people would be pushing, you'd be in the sun and all those edgy things that keep nudging you.
And that, I mean, life is magnetic, man, isn't it? So, I mean, thoughts, everything is magnetism, everything's energy. And on that note, when we're talking about the hierarchy of heart being on top, I know we say mind and the heart, the brain and the heart, inseparable, but the heart is on the top, and it is 5,000 times more powerful as a magnetic generator than the brain. So if you put skull cap on, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the electromagnetic field of the heart extends outside the body well over 1.5 meters. And we're not talking about an aura, we're not talking about woo-woo. This is, if you get a magnometer that you put next to a copper wire that had power running down it, it gives you an electromagnetic field, the size. Big ones, more power, bigger electromagnetic field, or a generator creates one. The electromagnetic field of the brain extends 2.5 centimeters from the head. The heart over 1.5 meters. Now, we know we're run by bioelectric energy. What makes cells fire? What makes neurons fire? What's running the body? It's a biochemical experience. So the electromagnetic field has a very strong affect on that. And interestingly, that field is filled with data that comes out of you. And that data is all about what you're feeling. And so it behooves one to take a few steps back and realize we've missed a vital piece of the puzzle by thinking that emotions are just something that psychiatrists should talk about, or psychologists should talk about, sit and have a chat and feel good. It's like, no. We're talking about a fundamental way to change the resonant state of your entire body for optimal health and optimal function.
Yeah, whether we're talking about healing from cancer or acne or whatever, the healing state requires a frequency set, and that's by emotion. And that's why, for me, this whole Heartmath and everything else that we talk about nowadays, we have to have some sort of an understanding of quantum physics, because that's the language we need to be talking now to understand this stuff. And entrainment is a very interesting concept, first discovered by that clockmaker with pendulum clocks.
Right. Yep.
When he thought one day, wow, they're always in sync. And one night he got all the clocks and made them out of sync. By the morning they were all in. He couldn't work out what happened, he just knew there's entrainment. And the physicists finally worked out that the biggest, most powerful pendulum pulls the rest in.
Exactly.
Magnetically. Now, we've just said that the heart is by far the most powerful electromagnetic organ in the body, and it sets the entrainment. So whatever the heart is pulsing out and setting a frequency, it entrains all the other organs and cells in the body. And that's why the Chinese medicine and everything else forever they know the center of the body is the heart.
Yeah, and it's it just brought to mind one of the research projects that Heartmath did. And not only do we entrain the entire body, but if we had 3 or 4 people who are what we call coherent, they've practiced their Heartmath techniques, which is nothing more than generating a positive emotion, a renewing emotion like gratitude, kindness, compassion, love, take your pick, hope, dignity, there's a whole host of them. Doing some heart-focused breathing, really focusing on the heart, because it is a highly intelligent center. It knows when you're paying attention to it, interestingly. Imagining you're breathing through it. It's not complex, you don't have to complicate it, it's simple. You can still do diaphragmatic breathing if that's your bent, but you imagine you're doing the breathing, you generate that feeling, the whole system changes. Now, what was found, you could have 3 or 4 people doing that. You could have someone else sitting at the table with them doing nothing at all, and their heart would become entrained or become coherent. And this study was replicated in groups, 10 groups, 4 people, 3 practicing the technique, 1 not, and in every group, whenever the people got coherent or became entrained, the other heart came on board. And that points to a really interesting experience for us as humans. So we're walking around, we've got the capacity, without having to jump into the healer's role or the saviour's role, you can stand at the checkout, see a poor person in distress on a Saturday morning with everyone waving credit cards while they talk on their phone at them to buy their groceries, and you can literally get yourself coherent and support that person's suffering without having to do much at all. Hands-off technique. Very cool.
Amazing, isn't it? And
Very
I mean,
cool.
that's the service of the enlightened person, is to hold space, isn't it?
You've got it.
And
that's a great term.
once again, in the course I'm doing at the moment, we've got a whole chapter where on the self-awareness chapter, where we focus on polyvagal theory and Stephen Porges' work, where he got to the end point where he realised, wow, our goal here is just to hold space, hold the energy. And then synergistically, we as a community, we're going to come together, and it's going to be pretty magic. So, important stuff. And it's hard for us to get our head around that emotions are so powerful and so important to focus on. We just think, if I'm not feeling as angry or shitty, then that's enough. But the training needs to be explain coherence, because that's the nuts and bolts of it here. We need to, and that's why I love Heartmath once again, because it's data driven. When you facilitate people, you're actually watching the sine waves, so when you're into coherence.
Yeah, and again, when you've got objective measures, when we can hook up the laptop, clip on a little sensor and look at your heart rhythms, which are created by the naturally occurring beat-to-beat change in your heart, we can see how what you're feeling affects those rhythms. And we know the effect on those rhythms have on the rest of the body. So coherence, or psychophysiological coherence, psycho head, physiological body coherence. It's when the heart, the feelings, the thoughts are all balanced in line. It's your natural resonant state. So a good analogy would be a bunch of rowers on the Swan River in a skiff. Now, if they're all pulling the oar at the exact same time, the oar's digging in just the right depth, and the coxswain's calling the stroke right on point, the boat just flies along effortlessly, super fast. Now, if a couple of those guys or girls are digging a bit deeper, they're missing the beat, the whole boat starts to jiggy and jaggy in the water and can spin in circles and sink. So that's a nice way of when we have these incoherent rhythms in our heart, what's going on. But what's really interesting is once we have, say for example, we just get a bit pissed off, just get irritated at something, burst of cortisol, that hangs around for a day and a half. Immunoglobulin A, first line of defense, starts dropping for 6 hours. So there's 2 biological changes without even talking about Heartmath and coherence. Then we have the message going up to the brain which says fight, flight, freeze. So we lock down, we limited our perception, we don't consider the other, we don't think, maybe there's something I don't know, and allow ourselves a broader view. And we dig a hole deeper and deeper. And so the incoherent state leaves us cognitively impaired, would be the best example, what they call cortical inhibition. Because the parts of the brain we need for facilitation and higher thought and consideration, they're shut down. It's not that you're a dickhead, it's just that your emotions have shut your brain down and you're inhibited.
Yeah, they literally go offline. There's nothing you can do about it. And for a lot of guys out there in relationships, and women too, but you would have known sometimes in the heat of an argument with your partner or something, your brain goes offline, you got nothing to say, you can't think of it, you've gone into a frozen state.
Yeah. Freeze.
And then you get in trouble for that with some people that don't, because some people just go into the fight or the flight, but some people in the emotional argument will go into freeze, and they think, I couldn't, and then the partner says, just say something, what's on you, and you can't say anything.
Yeah.
That's experiencing exactly what you just said.
Heath, that's a really great example, because relationships where we're all at, your relationship with everything in the world is what's most important, with yourself, with your house, with your dog, with your partner, with society, with the traffic cop. It's all about relationship. And those relationships all run on how we are internally. Are we shut down? Are we locked in fear? Or are we a sovereign being with our own ability to transcend these emotions. And what we're saying is there's no good and bad emotions at all. Emotions are there to be felt. Half the time we've got no idea why they're there. They're like food in the fridge. You open the fridge door, wow, where'd that pizza come from? I didn't buy that. Who put that there? And then there's a green smoothie there the next day. They come, they go. And we do need to be at ease with them. We're not talking about suppressing emotions at all. But what we're doing is using our intelligence. We understand a certain load of emotions are depleting, or we call depleting emotions, because they deplete our energy. They fire up all those things we've just been talking about. So to hang around in those longer than we need to, that's not very smart. Conversely, we know these other feelings are renewing feelings. They literally start the renewing process in the body. They build up all the good stuff that we want. So it really behooves one to just sit around and feel good for a while each day. And it sounds like such an obvious thing, but historically, we only feel good when we go and have a good time or something happens. Or, I've got a new job, wonderful, feel good for a little while. Or, this happens, that happens. But rarely do we actually sit and consciously just generate, say, a feeling of appreciation. 10 minutes just authentically really considering the things in your life you're grateful for. That practice is shown to really change your coherence and over time change the body's decision on its baseline. So when we talk about a baseline, we all have reactive baselines. Some people fly off at the drop of a hat. They're very reactive. Someone pulls out in front of the traffic and they're gone. They're psychopathic in seconds. Lucky we don't have guns here in Australia because there'd be a lot more dead people. Other people, it's other things, but we all have a baseline of reactivity. And what's been found with practice over 6 to 9 weeks, whether you're an 18-year-old school person or an 80-year-old, with practicing these coherence techniques and training your heart into that smooth rhythm, the body likes it and it starts to replicate it without you practicing at all. So you naturally drop into these coherent states, which align very much with the flow states that you're talking about. So to get in the flow, fundamentally you get coherent first and then get on with things that you're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Professor Stephen Porges' work. He found in his research that it's state precedes story. And that was quite profound for me because it's even more significant now because the state of your nervous system determines the perception you're going to gravitate towards. Right. So a lot of people get locked in these loops because they're stuck in a chronic low-level sympathetic state, locked in, always a little bit fight and flight, always flighty, always anxious. And then that starts to drop a filter where they perceive everything
perfect, Heath.
As that way.
Exactly
so
that.
State precedes story. So what you have to do is change your state. How do you change your state? Change your emotion. Focus on gratitude. Focus on, and that's what you guys specialize in. Yeah. And the other thing that I was thinking of when you were saying that is that we need to realize that with our evolutionary brain, the way it's growing, there's a default state, and that default state is where's the stress? Where's the stress? Our default state is to look for stress. It's a survival thing. Yeah. But our evolution, our growth requires us to practice rewiring a new brain.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that most people don't realize the human brain hasn't evolved very much in the last 10,000 years. There's been epigenetics, there's been changes, but fundamentally, we are still hardwired for fight, flight, freeze. That was how we survived as a species. But if you take a second to imagine the world 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, then think of it, 400 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago. What's happened? What change has happened? And what's happened is the pace of life has gone out of control, exponential. But we are still responding with an old wired system. So that pace where we're never catching up, we're always worried about something, the next thing, this thing, that thing. This keeps us in that fight, flight, freeze all the time. And it's interesting that we had another evolved state called the Mammalian caregiving system that came along. And this is a state that allows that kindness to actually have a physical effect on our body as well, creating oxytocin, dopamine, opioids are released and the parasympathetic nervous system comes on board. So this came about to help children bond with their parents, So when the mother says those soothing words to the child, or the father says those soothing words with a soft touch, inside the little child there has to be a response, otherwise nothing would take place, there'd be no bonding. And what happens in the child is this beautiful cascade of drugs, basically. Good opioids, parasympathetic nervous system, oxytocin. And that feels so good, they want some more of that, and that's why we do that. And we can do that for ourselves as adults. Most people don't realise you want to be your own best friend, then start bringing a bit of self-kindness through an authentic, soft touch, kind words, stop the critical chatter, because that puts you in fight, flight, freeze. If you're a person who's always hard on yourself, you've got to stop, or you're not going to make progress in other areas of your life because you're inhibiting your progress evolutionary. You're holding yourself in that old reptilian brain, in that old fight, flight, freeze, protectionist type way, that separation way. You're never going to drop into the flow state.
Yeah, and it's not our destiny as humans. I mean, we got to get through this gateless gate, which is through safety, like you said before. Once you feel safe and there's a possession of there, it opens up a new circuitry in the brain, which now we can get onto the business of what we came for. It's creative, been connected in a creative way, where like we're doing what you came to do, something creative for you, but you can't do that in a state of fear, scarcity.
And that's why we've got a real schism going on. And my partner and I Catherine has seen this a lot, where we've got a lot of beautiful people. They're taking on a lot of really good practices. They're eating well. They're coming here to Mother and having good, healthy food. They're, they're watching their diet. They're doing some exercise. They're meditating or trying to meditate. They're doing their yoga. But behind it, there's this edge of achievement, this edge of when I get there, this edge of I've got to be the perfect self, the best self. And inherent in that is a fail mechanism, because there's no acceptance that right now, if you just relax, and it will be revealed. It's really obvious that when we stop long enough, properly, then the path opens up. It's clearly lit by spirit, by life itself, because we're not separate from life. That's the illusion of the paradigm that we're stuck in. We're sort of stuck in two paradigms. They're existing at the same time. One, the illusion that we're separate, this idea that we're separate, we clearly feel separate. But then there's the other one where we know, or a lot of us know, that we are one being, one whole consciousness, experiencing itself as billions of humans. And to hold those two paradigms is really challenging when the dominant paradigm says separate, fear, struggle, try, where the other paradigm says stop, let go, it's all okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. We got sold this gig that work hard, be ambitious, get the car, the family, and then you'll be happy.
That's right.
Whereas now we know it's flip. Be happy first and now, and then success comes.
Yeah. It's absolutely, and go back to resonance. Okay, so you want something, just resonate the feeling of having it. Most people, they waste so much time and money saving up to buy a big sports car, and the feeling of having that sport car lasts a very short time. Really, a few weeks. New leather, fast car, and then it's a burden. You've got to pay the insurance, you've got to worry about parking, all these things. But you could sit here now and just authentically connect with the feeling of having your new car. What's it like to drive this awesome flash vehicle, electric car, of course, a Tesla. And you can get that feeling and breathe that feeling through your system. There you are, you're resonating at it. It's no different to having the damn thing.
Yeah, well, this is it. The subconscious does not know the difference. And you're going to release some
and
some
you're
juice.
breathing that truth there. And this is how I've learned to navigate things, is when I want something, the challenge there is the wanting creates lack, a sense of lack, not having, and lack. So instead, if I resonate the feeling of, well, how will I be when I have it? What's the feeling I'll have when I've got that? And just walk around with that for a while, and then knock on the door, and someone's left it on the doorstep for you.
Yeah.
It's quite bizarre.
Magical life, huh? Hey, how important, and I think one of the core things for health, and my whole podcast is about how can we become healthier, how can we grow health? And I really believe that it begins with self-awareness and catching your negative emotions out, because like you said, it's very binary. It's either positive emotions have positive effect or negative emotions have negative effect, and it's physiological very quickly. A very good friend of mine, super conscious woman, she was in a bad relationship. She didn't know it for a long time. But this guy was a charlatan. He was speaking, he was talking the lingo and acting this and that. Turns out that behind the scenes, he was seeing heaps of other people blowing all her money on prostitutes. And it was pretty dark and pretty dirty, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when she she eventually finds out, like most people do, there's some dodgy texts and things, they slip up, you know. And when she found out the extent of this, it was like full on. You can imagine the shock going through that system.
The rage.
Poor woman. Well, yeah. Anyway, long story short, she deals with it, kicks this guy to the curb and things like that. But the mother-in-law was really doting on this guy, right? And was always making excuses for him. Making excuses for this inexcusable behaviour.
Yeah.
She, being an honourable woman, just kept her mouth shut and just like, well, okay, whatever. And she developed a really sore throat.
Interesting.
Really bad throat. And she started to get throat infections, things like this. One day, it was too much when she ran into the mother-in-law again, and she had enough. And she just like let it go. Said, no, it's unacceptable. And just said her piece.
Yeah.
Bang, throat stuff gone overnight. She was a super conscious woman. None of this is new to her, all this sort of stuff. But still, she didn't, make the connection. And then when she expressed that emotion, the frequency shifted, gone. That susceptibility would have been brewing and would have become very, it would have been embedded, and she would have had throat problems on a deeper level, cleared instantly from just letting that resonance go.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, the way the body supports what we're not seeing. You know, maybe we get some irritable eye, or we stick something in our eye and get a bit of a bung eye for a bit, and then you realise, we are interconnected with our life. It just can't be separate. And that's a great example of it.
And I mean, how vast is this intelligence of the heart that connects up? Like you said, there's a synergy, all hearts connect. All rivers lead back to the ocean.
Yeah.
And there's this one ocean-sized heart that is wanting us all to be happy, healthy, and coherent. And so, you got to wonder, there is magic and mystery in the world that we've got to... I like the saying the Arabs had, like, believe in God, but tie up your camel.
Tether the camel, that's right.
And
I like that. That's a really good phrase, because there's this delusion that, we get all our ducks in a row, we get on enlightened and life's great. And I don't believe that at all. We've got no idea what life's going to be, but we can have a heart that's ready to face it. And we can know that whatever we're facing is for our betterment. How many times you've had a situation, you've called it a bad situation, later on you look back and you think, oh my God, I'm so glad that took place. It's on and on. And the thing about the work with the Heartmath that I find the most supportive is that we're human, we fuck up. We're going to get pissed off, we're going to make judgments, we're going to do all this stuff. But having that slight awareness of what it's doing, it stops you, you reset. You use these techniques like the quick coherence technique, 1 minute technique. Just stop, reset your system to bring cognitive skills back online to shut the fuck up. Don't send that email. Do things that are going to support you down the track, because you've caught yourself, you've stopped. And as you start to be the investigator of your own life, you start to dig a bit deeper and you see maybe where there's stuff you're holding on to that needs a bit of heart, needs a bit more heart work. So you can learn to sit with this and put these old things into the heart and let the heart do its work and deliver the intelligence to the brain. There are a lot of different techniques that we use for personal growth, for those interested to go a little deeper and actually use this incredible intelligence, what we call heart intelligence. So the heart intelligence is often a quiet whisper, but the loudness of the ego, the brain, the noise from the mind, we never hear the poor thing. Or you sort of had that feeling and you didn't follow it, and afterwards you kick yourself. Well, there's that little intelligence there.
And it's interesting too, because when you start working with the heart intelligence, it's instant, fast information. Whereas we're used to mulling things over in the mind, using our rational mind, and like let's think about this, pros and cons. Let's do 2 columns, and we think that's the way.
No.
Whereas if you upgrade into a heart intelligence system and you go in there, it's instant, and then you might doubt that.
Well, you will doubt it because you're not used to it. You don't trust it yet. And I like the way you say that, because it's instant, because it's in the present moment. And that's the only place that reality is. The thinking mind's using the past and ideas of a future that hasn't turned out yet. And you can make your list and do it the next day and the list will be different. Do it the day after, the list will be different. But if you authentically quieten your system down, quieten the mind down through this simple coherence building technique, and listen to the heart. It might be a subtle feeling. It might be a shift in perception, a mild shift in perception that changes everything. And that happens in the moment because the heart's connected to the field of information, the field of data that we sit in. So there's some of the research is mind-bending. You think it'd be like the craziest woo-woo shit on the planet, some of the stuff we've looked at, but they've repeated this research in other places, other labs around the world, and come up with exactly the same results, where the heart is basically predicting the future, clearly predicting the future in these tests. And it's like, well, how can that be? It's like, well, there is no future. Now we have to shift paradigms. Now we have to really get a bit more real about who we are and where we're living and how we interact with this field of information that we're part of. And do you want to take that step? To me, that's the healthiest step. If you want health, you've got to move away from this paradigm that keeps you in fear, that says you're a separate, isolated little person struggling to find your way in this mad world. Now, you've got to admit this world's mad.
Pretty
You've got to
crazy.
admit your mind's mad.
Seems that way.
Because it just goes on and on all the time, never shuts up. But I know there's a spot behind all that where there's this beautiful stillness, this tranquility that we can access through our meditation. We can get our body settled down through our coherence work, and then we can get that guidance from our spirit through our heart.
Yeah, and it's because it really begins with just becoming conscious of what's the mental chatter, where's the negativity, what's these cognitive distortions, things like that. And then, if nothing else, step one is quite often just get to neutral.
Yes.
Hey,
Wow,
step
very
one,
good.
man.
Things in the neutral.
Let's not like pretend here that this is an easy pursuit of repetitive thoughts that have been happening since we were 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. This stuff is entrenched. So quite often the great success story of Heartmath is to first of all to be able to control your way back to neutral.
Yeah. And since this is a health-oriented podcast, we should just let people know that simply stopping, and when I say stop, you don't have to physically stop, but taking that moment to check in, shift their attention to the center of their chest, that's where the heart is, not over on the left, but actually behind the breastbone, or the chest area. You don't have to get too specific. I'm a Virgo, I like to get specific.
Yeah.
Just bring your attention there, shift it out of your thinking. And if you start to imagine the breath coming in through the heart on the in-breath, and out through the heart on the out-breath, breathing a little slower, a little deeper, and not forcing it, not like pumping it up, just it's an easy breathing. And, you know, the suggestion is breathe in for the count of 5 and out for the count of 5. But if you've got emphysema, you're not going to manage that, so 2 would do, as long as it's slower and deeper than usual. Again, just keeping your attention on your heart, doing that breathing. Now, if you just do that for 30 seconds to a minute, you have started a whole change in your physiology, and you'll notice it. And with practice, if you start practicing this, doing it regularly, huge shifts happen in your reaction.
It's the greatest gift you could give someone because, once again, state precedes story.
That's
state
right.
determines story. By doing that for 30 seconds, you can change your state, which is going to change how you're perceiving your situation. All of a sudden, we all know as soon as we lose ourselves to rage, you get dumber, start making dumber decisions.
And a lot of emotions make us dumber because we're cortically inhibited. And one of my clients yesterday, he gave a great example of what we need to do. He said, you know, he's always jumping on the phone. The phone rings, he grabs it. He's in the middle of something. He just picks it up and starts talking. And I'm thinking, well, who's at the other end? What sort of conversations is it? How important is it? What state is he in? Whereas if he takes a moment, does some heart-focused breathing, and as we know from the polyvagal theory, information travelling through the ear goes to the vagus nerve. So the nuances of conversation, the nuances coming down the phone will be heard very differently if you're coherent as to being incoherent. So the respect for that conversation comes in, the ability to really tune in and hear what's going on. It's a whole other world. And it really is just a few breaths away, a few focus breaths. And for a lot of people, I don't feel any change, nothing happening. It's like, yeah, well, how tuned in are you with your feelings? How tuned are you in the subtleness of these shifts? Because the subtle perceptions that the heart give are often so soft we don't notice them, so we don't think they're happening. But when we slow down, when we get that feeling going, then we're more aware of them.
Yeah, and the journey begins. For me, it begins with know thyself. You know, it always has my whole career. It's
Beautiful.
like know thyself, and that's why I'm in health. The pursuit of health is the way of self-knowledge, really, because we start to learn these things. But when people start to spend a number of times a day trying to just touch base. What's the mind chatter? How am I feeling? For a lot of people, because most of us have gone through trauma, they're going to be in a frozen state or in a state of armament. Either way, you're not going to feel the juicy subtleness of this stuff. So it takes time, and you've got to want it change. You've got to want it to happen.
Yeah.
You've got to put in the work. None of this is easy, but that's why the reward is so amazing.
Well, it is, and my biggest joy is that when I have people turn up and I can see they want to change, they've had enough. They're suffering. We're all suffering to some degree or other, and we need to get used to that. Not as a failure, but as an acknowledgement of our human condition.
With resilience, isn't it? That's
absolutely.
The whole core.
And when we know that we all suffer, it actually feels a bit better. I'm not alone. There's the first step out of the locked-in cave of me locked in my own suffering. Suddenly I realise there's millions suffering like me. Wow, I'm human. Wow, that changes my neurology. But when I see this earnest desire, and I just give them the basics, it's very simple homework I give people. It's not more than half an hour a day, and a little bit of this, a little bit of introspection. And I see them come back a week later, because I run a 6-week course, 1 hour a week, so I can go home, do the work, come back, report, see how we're going, do a little bit more, or reassess and see how we can help. The ones who are really earnest, the change is rapid, almost miraculous. You'd have to use that word with some of these people. Other people turn up and you can see they want to click the fingers, they want to take the magic pill. They're there and they've heard about it and they want to give it a go, but they don't realise the complexity of their malady. And like you said, you've got to know thyself. And when you know yourself, then you realise, wow, this is going to take a bit of work. I have to give myself a bit of latitude. I've got to extend my horizon for my time horizons and soften down. And that alone can really help.
For real. Yeah, the most important thing. Because it's so complex. Like a lot of people, like care versus overcare is an interesting one. You see these people that a lot of people think, well, how can you overcare? You can't overcare. You can't be drunk on love. You can't be this or that. But you can, because life is about balance. So you can do too much of anything.
Yeah, it's a great one for you to bring up, and I can talk about care, overcare for ages, because I felt like I've done a PhD on it, coming from a history of overcare. And Catherine and I, as Heartmath facilitators and carers and running events, we used to overcare. And what that means is that our care was draining us of our energy. We were taking on too much responsibility for other people's journeys, other people's health, other people's insights and growth. And Heartmath has a real big section on care, overcare, because we know that overcare drains our energy, depletes us. So the way to understand whether I'm caring or overcaring is basically care is nourishing and uplifting. Overcare, out comes the tut and the sighs and, yeah, well, I suppose I have to and no one else is going to do it and I'm the only one and, you've got to be responsible, we've got to care and, God, I've got 500 things on my plate, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it, someone's got to do it. And that tone, that shift, overcare. There's always someone else around and we don't know what each person needs anyway. So often our perception of needing to help someone, maybe they need to help themselves. I had a mother the other day I'm working with, she's in her 70s and her son, who's 36, has a partner who has a lot of psychological challenges. And he rings her up and she comes round and helps because she has these manic episodes. And she's drained. She come back from a lovely week up the coast, Christmas. She comes to see me and I said, how's it all going? Oh, good, but I got the call and I went around, I had to shake her and settle her down and do all this. And I'm like, he's not 14 anymore. He's 36. Don't you think he needs to step up? And maybe no is a loving response. And maybe no is a complete sentence as well. Mum, can you come and help? No.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we talked about a lot of these things, but there's entanglement as well. And this is why we get locked in. And if you make a change, the best thing you can do is not go back to your own hometown.
You got it, brother. Because
people won't let you change, man.
They don't want you to change.
And then you fall back into that thing, and we bounce off each other and stuff like that. So a lot of the work sometimes is you're making change in yourself, is to hold that ground amongst the other relationships, and they will change too without you having to do anything. So
and that's really intelligent what you're offering here, and I really believe that, because I see it in myself. I've seen this in myself. I've seen it in others. That's why addicts have to leave all their friends and go and live somewhere else. They can't hang out with the same people. It's impossible. You're entrained into that lifestyle, and you're all sober, and you're sort of putting on, oh, it's okay, I don't need to smoke, that you can all get stoned, I don't mind. But it just doesn't work. You need to freshen up. You're on a new trajectory. You're resonating in a different frequency. Think of it that way. When we change our resonance. And the old resonance, if it's strong enough, like the grandfather clocks, it'll pull us back into that. But if we're smart enough, we'll spend time on our own instead, and we'll build up that. We'll draw in spiritual energy to support us. We'll start to get our being resonating at a higher frequency. And I'm talking true frequency, a true internal shift. And then we're going to draw in the people that are going to support that, who are going to resonate with us, and maybe a whole new pathway opens up.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. The old mind and our perception things is interesting. I remember the best thing I got out of the first time I did one of your course was simply, you said, the skill of taking the significance out of things. And for me, Virgo too, can get intense. You know what I mean? And I can build it up in my mind. It's more and more important. Just that one thing to take the significance out of it, and then bang, you could just feel your energy would drop, because 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it's not that important.
99.999. So just so people know what we're talking about here, taking the significance out, the more significance we give something, the more emotional charge we have about it. So if we can take some significance out, we can take some of the emotional charge or the righteous anger that comes with it. The great example is, so you've got a nice car, you come into the car park and someone scratched it. So you can give that a lot of significance. Some fucker scratched my car, what's wrong with this world? And you can get yourself wound right up, cortisol, anger, just losing it on some scratches on your car. Or you could come out, same person, same car, same situation, reality hasn't changed, scratch on your car, you're like, oh, scratch on the car, fuck, that's not very cool. I'll get it cut and polished. Someone scratched my car, it's metal and paint.
Yeah.
Am I going to think about it in 10 years' time?
Yeah, and no. the very difference is one person got drowned in cortisol, suppressed the immune system, like you said, not for 5 minutes.
No. This
is like, if it's compounded, your chronic stress head and things like that, it ain't coming down.
No.
That cortisol will peak at that level and stay like that for ages. And that's the beautiful thing with a lot of this, when we're talking about using a positive emotion, like the happiness or the gratitude actually physically depletes the cortisol.
Yeah, did you know over 6 to 9 weeks of practicing this very simple stuff? We're not talking rocket science. We're not talking Vipassana meditation, 10 hours meditating every day for 10 days. We're talking about spending some time daily with the heart-focused breathing, generating the positive emotion in a very focused manner. 6 to 9 weeks. Pretty well everyone that does this, cortisol drops by 25%.
Yeah, their baseline.
That's massive because cortisol is the big inflamer. It inflames our emotions. It inflames our liver. Obesity, diabetes. These are all cortisol-driven inflammatory diseases.
Yeah.
The arthritides. Why has Australia got the biggest heart attack or cardiac problems of the planet? And America, the Western world, especially Australia, people are dropping dead every minute from inflammatory heart disease. They're having an attack of the heart. They're not coherent.
Yeah.
They left it too long.
Yeah, and I mean the heart is an endocrine organ as well. It releases atrial peptide, which
right.
Its greatest affinity is to the adrenals.
That's right.
So I mean, a lot of naturopath stuff we talk about, like adrenal burnout and all that stuff. It's not, the adrenals don't burn out. It's just a cortisol
rush.
Yeah, it's just too much. You get like a cortisol resistance in a sense, and But anyway, so powerful stuff. Hey, what thing about you is, out of everyone I know, man, you can build habits and habituate yourself really, really well. Like me, I'm not that great. Like when you put your mind to it, I'm going to make a habit of this. 365 days later, you nailed it. You still get it going. What's the trick to getting a new habit forming or? Yeah,
well, obviously it depends on the personality a lot, but it also depends on the drive. What's your intention? And the thing about habits is that people get tripped up by thinking about how long it takes. but it doesn't take any time at all because you're just doing it once in the day, and then you do it once again the next day, and then you do it once again the next day, and you do that, and you just say, well, I'm just going to do this every day. It's only short, small. You know, most of the changes we get, the most sustained changes we get, come from very small, consistent practice, not big events. These big events we go to the weekend retreats and all that, they're great. But because we've taken ourselves away from our home, part of our mind sort of thinks, oh, that's only over there. Or we get in and we stay good for a few days or weeks and then we drop it. Stuff we implement at home in our normal environment, that's what sticks. So for me, it's getting routines and rituals. We're coming back to why I like rituals, because they're nothing more than habits in a way. They're habits that have been built up over millennia for some people. Ceremonies, they're a ritual, a habit if you like. So the secret is, don't think of it as something in the future that you've got to keep doing. It just wears you down straight away. Oh, I can't manage that. 3 months of doing that. No, just do it once today. Get up tomorrow. I've got to do my Heartmath breathing. Okay, I'll do that today.
Yeah, don't overthink it. Hey,
don't overthink it. In the present moment, it's all available. And people don't realise the slower they go, the more time they have.
Yeah.
So then you've got plenty of time to do these good things for yourself because they don't take a long time. One of the big driving things from Heartmath is eyes open, on-the-go exercises, because we know that the pace of life is so fast and we need to be able to work with that, because it's the biggest challenge we've got, is that life's going too fast and we can't emotionally cope with it. And that's why we shut down. That was why we go to fight, flight, freeze. We're not able to process all this information that's coming in so quickly. And that's why we get overwhelmed. And overwhelm leads to anxiety, depression, and burnout. And it's a very simple equation. And it's so obvious where it's coming from. It's coming from the pace of life. Twitch, phone, ding, get this done. You can get back to me in 5 seconds. What's wrong? It's too much. Stop. Take a breath.
You'd have a pretty structured life in some sense, would you say?
Yeah, well,
you have the same morning routine or things like this?
Yeah, I have a very structured morning routine, because I think the way we start the day is how we hit the day. And I always have a day off from my morning routine because I'm a rebel. I go against the grain. I can't believe I'm sitting where I am now in my life if I think back to how much I rebelled against myself, how much I rebelled against my health, my intelligence, my growth, my spiritual endeavours, because I just wanted to rebel against any discipline at all. So there's freedom in discipline, and that's what people don't realise. Discipline gives you freedom. So a health discipline gives you freedom of good health. You're not sick. Meditation discipline gives you freedom of expansion of consciousness. Each discipline has its inherent freedom within it.
What's your morning routine? Because it's pretty cool.
Okay, just simply it is wake up, take a moment to be grateful. Just, I'm alive. That should be enough. But no, it's not enough. We've got to do a whole lot of stuff now. We'll sit up and do a couple of rounds of Wim Hof breathing. If people know, I'm sure they know about Wim Hof. Some breathing, hyperoxygenate the body. And after sleeping all night, when our breathing isn't so effective, what better way to start the day? Then we get up and we're doing 15 minutes of cardio or 15 minutes of some exercise. Then into the shower, hot shower, and then 2-minute cold shower. Especially in winter, best time, because it's so hard to do. It's so hard to stay with that discipline. At the moment, it's piss easy, man, especially after a workout. You want that cold shower. So 2-minute cold shower, then we make the elixir. It's either a protein shake, like a green smoothie with a protein shake, or it's the brown Betty, the Coca Bebida Cola Beta, chocolate drink for life, with a game of backgammon. So games are great, because games keep you very focused in the present moment. You're not thinking about the day in ahead. You're in the moment. Play, nothing like play, and a little bit of fun competition. Not too serious. So we have that, and then we'll sit and meditate for half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour, depending.
And then this has been your routine for a long time. Like, you've been playing a lot of game of backgammon.
We've been playing a lot of game. The exercise part hasn't been as much, but we really realised the importance of the endorphins, how good I'm feeling now with the consistency of that morning. And then obviously I'm slowly getting a bit of fitness back, which I'd lost because I'd rather sit and meditate than exercise. I don't like exercising. I really don't. It just seems dumb. I like to play games if that exercises me. I like to do things where I get exercised. Hikes, I love hiking and bushwalks, but I don't get to do enough of that because I'm here in the city working. But I don't like the gym idea. But I have a 15-minute tolerance where it's really exciting. I get that heart pumping, feels really good on lots of levels, and I'm starting to feel the benefit. But put into the other things, so there's a balance, like you talked about, moderation and balance. I don't think you need to spend your whole day in the gym looking at your sexy body trying to buff yourself up. I don't think that helps mankind very much, humankind, evolutionarily.
No, it can be armament as well, which we were talking about before, but it could also be just because they dig it. But I mean, you've got to be careful, don't you? Okay, what about, has there been one single intervention or something you've brought into your life that's made the biggest impact on your health? Was it a supplement? Was it an exercise? Or is there anything that comes to mind? Or is it just an accumulative add-on?
Well, I'd say there are so many.
Yeah.
Truthfully, there's so many things that happened that I brought into my life, and I dived in deeply, and they shifted my trajectory. But where I am now, what I'd say is the style of meditation that I'm doing, hands down, transcends anything I've done and anything I do, because it seems to align me with my purpose. It seems to align me with the universe, with life. Like, I see consciousness as this co-evolving thing. I don't see it as a separate thing. So when I sit down, I don't make a problem out of anything. And I just sit for half an hour, be totally content with everything as is. I don't try and change my state. I don't consciously try and change my state. Something happens, something quite deep and profound. And then I get up from there, and the path is lit, so to speak. It's taken a lot of practice, because it's the hardest thing to do, especially now, is to sit and do nothing. It's the hardest thing you can do. You start off well for the first 30 seconds.
Not easy, man.
But a couple of minutes in, you're struggling. The mind's busy. Oh, God, well, don't worry about it. Have a busy mind. Fine. Yeah. Falling asleep. Great. Fall asleep. You have a very, so meditation, just to get clear, to me, the definition of meditation is being okay with everything as it is. Just accepting everything as it is. That's meditation. And because that's what's going on, that's reality as well. And it's a very subtle, nuanced thing to get to that point where you surrender. This is the base of surrender to what's going on. The lawnmower's going next door, your mind's busy, you got an ache in your back, you want to get up and eat something. Great, that's all happening. That doesn't stop your meditation.
No, and it's a good. It suggests that you're out of the head into the heart if you're in that state too, that you're in acceptance state.
Yeah.
Which is, at the end of the day, that's what you want from meditation. After what we've just talked about, you'd hope that would drop you into the main brain, which is the heart.
Yeah, and we're not talking about a passive lying around smoking bongs watching Jerry Springer. We're talking about accessing energy that...
You just dated yourself so much then.
We're just, we're talking about accessing the driving force of life, the co-creative energy that lines you up and lifts you up and gives you this infinite energy when you need it, and then it's not there when you don't need it. You don't have to work on building all this energy. It'll be there when you need it if you're in tune.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, man. It's all about energy. And a lot of people are tired and they're fatigued and they're not realising the cause of it is they're grinding the gears. They've got one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake, and they're just jamming them both in.
Yeah.
So these are the skills. And so you're a facilitator. So people, I'll have links at the bottom of this, but people they can get in touch with you, and then you do group workshops, you do individual work.
Yeah. So I'm running like a public talk called The Science of the Heart. So you come along, it's $30. We do a deep dive into it's physiology. That's what I like about this. It's not psychology. This is advanced anatomy. It's called neurocardiology, the field of neurocardiology. So we have a good look at that, have a look at some examples. I hook someone up to one of my devices to show in real time how the emotions change the heart rhythms, what that means. Then we sit and do a 20-minute meditation, drinking some cacao, of course, and get the whole group coherent together and get them to feel what that's like in real time. So it's a practical workshop. And that's
undeniable too, because you're seeing the waves, the heart rate variability in front of you. You're seeing that, and then you experience the effect after you've done a group lock-in and so forth. Yeah. So it's for a lot of people that meditation and their emotional, mental, spiritual work is like, oh man, I just can't get into that. They've exposed to too many hippies and they've exposed to too many charlatans, and they think, fuck that. Yeah. This is where I would push them. I'd say, look, okay, you need to go check out Heartmath because it's pragmatic. Yeah, and
it's down to earth.
The most science behind it too. I mean, if you need that or want that.
Yeah. And what happens is, that's what I like. There's subjective. How did that feel for you? Oh my God, I feel really late. That feels much better. Or how's that? Let's have a look. Wow, look at you could get coherent in that. Or let's stay with that for a bit. How's your thinking? How's your energy now that we've had these? You try the practice. Just sit and feel grateful for 5 minutes, then see where your energy's at. It's going to be up. Or sit around and be all irritated and pissed off, and where's your energy? It's down. It's not rocket science. So it's really good in the group environment because it's really easy for people to come in, hang out, there's tea when you come in. We look after everyone, of course, and it's just a 2-hour event. So that's on a Friday night in February the 12th, coming up. But you can go on the website. We've got a little calendar with all the things, and I also do one-on-one training with people. So people are complex. And often it's great to have someone there just to assist you on that journey. Yeah,
and keep you honest too. I mean, you need people understand a personal trainer. They're going to keep you showing up to the gym and stuff. But it's more important, man. Your perceptions and you're driving more physiology and more chemistry this way.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't realise that resilience is understood, but emotional resilience has the biggest effect on all the other fields: mental, spiritual, physical. So we've got physical. We go to the gym. We do our prayers, mental, we do that. But if you're emotionally out of whack, it affects every other field. But if you're emotionally coherent, it affects every other field in the very positive way, in the way that you really want it to affect everything. You work out better. Your eye-hand coordination is so much better when you're coherent. Athletes are using it. Elite athletes are using this because it gives them that edge. The extra 1%, 2%, 10% makes a huge difference. In schools they're using it to help people with study and nerves, anxiety around exams, uni, all that you have to take on, all that organising. Well, if you're coherent, the faculties are working sharper, quicker, so you can think more clearly, less overwhelm, which is really cool. And on a mental, spiritual level, well, when you're coherent, you're more open to yourself, to something higher, something bigger. So it's a lot easier to meditate when you're coherent as well. You've quietened down the mind already, and then off you go, just be with it.
Yeah, and like where we started, I mean, do you want a successful life? The science has shut the gate on that. It's like emotional health is number one.
Yeah.
So that's where it's at. I think it's the most important stuff. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Great.
Heath.
Get you on as a regular. Keep us updating on the world of Heartmath and everything else. And then, hey, maybe the next time we could talk about psilocybin.
Yep.
And what's been happening in that field of the psychedelics. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, it is. It's coming out of the closet.
Yeah.
It's coming out of the shamed period that it's had, because once again, science, the language of the 21st century, that's all science is. There's nothing to be anti-science about, especially as a hippie like myself. I was a good hippie for many years, an earthy boy, living on the land. But the science, the research, the studies looking at this pharmacopoeia of psilocybin is without a doubt, it's the mental health revolution of the 21st century.
Because there's so many ways we can do the microdosing or whatever, so you don't have to freak out on a level.
Oh no, in fact that's not the way forward.
No.
Many people shouldn't be taking it. But what's good with the research is we're learning how to screen the people. Everyone says, oh, take mushrooms, it's the thing. It's like, no, it's not the thing. For some people it's the thing. For PTSD, for depression, anxiety, certain sorts of anxiety. But psilocybin amplifies things, so you've got to watch out.
And this is where, once again, it's the perfect thing for you, because it's all about set and setting. It's all about being facilitated. You can take the chemical, but it's got to be in an environment that's going to make the integrated change.
And even with the microdosing, there's procedures, there's protocols, and they're protocols because they work. Just taking a bit every second day and doing that forever, it's never going to help you. You need to have a baseline. You need to see what's changing. Stop, and how are you now? Have you changed? Has it made any difference?
Yeah, look, I'd be a super enlightened dude right now if it worked the way I did it back in my 20s.
I hear you. No, that would be great. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey,
Heath.
my
I
pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. My job is to bring people on board here and expose people to our audience here that I truly believe can make a massive impact on their health. And so, got you on super early.
Well, I'm honoured to come here because I know the people that listen to you and come here are earnest people. They really care about their health. I've been to a lot of your workshops. I love your talks and workshops. We always turn up.
Thanks, man.
And I see I see the people there. And I love the people there because I see the earnest desire for change and the care they've got for themselves and their families. And so if we can collaborate and offer grounded, authentic tools and techniques and knowledge that they can then take what resonates with them, back to that word, and then maybe that bit of difference in that person's life really is a difference in their life.
Yeah,
you know?
It's going to make our life better because we're all connected. But like you said, simple but not easy in a sense. So if nothing else, if people only take away from this, that the heart is the center, and all you have to do is put your hand on your heart and breathe in and out of your heart at 4 to 5 breaths, slow it down, do nothing else. Don't even remember the science here. And be conscious enough to go, how did I feel before and after that for 30 seconds?
Yeah, to a minute just to get started.
If nothing happens, you found out that you're a robot,
yeah.
which is a good thing.
Or you're dead.
You haven't got a heart. You're like, what's that on? Dorothy's, whatever.
Yeah, Wizard of Oz.
But this is it. You get know thyself. Know that, man, we in the chest here, we have something phenomenal.
Yeah, and especially when we're feeling a little upset, stressed, in the traffic. You know, when you're running late and everything's conspiring to make you later and you're pushing that wall, you can feel, just remember to do some heart-focused breathing and watch everything slow down. You take some significance out. You suddenly realise it's not the end of the world and you get there on time.
Yeah, you'll change your state, you'll change your story. This is magic, man, because we believe our story. We believe our story. That's why if you're sarcastic and angry because your parents were and things like that, that's your story, man. That paradigm isn't in prison now. So like, to change, get out of that prison, to get through an eye of a needle, how can I get through an eye of a needle? That's impossible. It's obviously just a parable. Yeah, it's a parable, but it's real. You get through that eye of a needle by changing the story.
Yeah, getting the baggage off. There's
Change
no room
the
for the
state.
baggage through the needle hole.
No, man.
You can't take much through there.
Yeah. So this is it. This is where it begins. So thanks, man. We'll do it again and again and again. And we'll hit people over to your website and see which ones stick.
Thank you so much, Heath. Great. Cheers.